This program is for business leaders who want to succeed faster by learning the skill of optimal quitting. Have you ever invested so much time, money, and effort in something that made it feel like quitting would be a complete waste of resources? If you have, welcome to the sunk cost fallacy. It is so natural that even though I and many other people have known about this for many years, even in it, especially in it, it's like, oh, it just feels like such a waste, even though I technically know better, as do many others. Essentially, everyone from individuals to governments tend to get sucked into this particular fallacy, and it's not the only one that is talked about in this case. And yet, knowing about these things doesn't really protect you unless you learn about and do a pre-mortem and create kill criteria. Even then, it's far from a guarantee. It just reduces your chances of suffering and being a victim of these very strong psychological biases. This is actually a book review of Annie Duke's book. It's a brilliant work called Quit: The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away. I originally decided to listen to this book after listening to a podcast, and she was on there. And I loved it because it does something that appeals to my nature, is that it was sort of contradictory to or counterintuitive of common sense and my own knowledge base, which is very much around grit and determination and perseverance. So this was a good book for me to read to sort of balance off that position. And she did a great job and brought a lot of great science to the argument. So stay to the end for bonus material on integrating prioritization into your optimal quitting strategy and my recommended video on strategic quitting. So this is a great book, and it takes a deep dive into making better decisions and solving problems in high stakes situations or poker games. The reason I say that is the author Annie Duke was the 2004 World Series of Poker gold bracelet winner turned speaker, author, and expert consultant on the decision-making process. Now, she isn't just a poker player. Before she became a professional poker player, she was actually on the way to her PhD in cognitive linguistics, and because of health issues, she was forced to quit her PhD program just shy of receiving that PhD. Now, it's really great because in this book, she cites a lot of well-known big dog researchers that I know of, but who are in particular, what's important is world-renowned academics like Philip E. Tetlock, whom I learned about through the next guy, Daniel Kahneman. She cites a whole bunch of other researchers. These are the two I just know sort of off the top of my head. In other words, she knows what the fuck she's talking about from both a real-world perspective, but also an academic and research-backed position. She really goes into some pretty extensive detail of really well-known real-world situations where people, businesses, and government failed miserably to quit when they should have, as well as some far less famous examples of when people quit correctly at the right time. That is, they made the right quitting decision, because we don't really glorify quitting, even when it's the right decision. And that's what makes this thing so counterintuitive and so valuable to you as a business leader, because we need to know both when is the right time to quit and when is the right time to persevere. The whole world is covered with books on how to persevere, and I promote the heck out of that because I really believe in it. This is something counterintuitive, which we all need to pay attention to sort of balance that pendulum to make even better leadership decisions. She very insightfully points out that everybody is really vulnerable to a really long list of cognitive biases. We'll talk about today one called the status quo bias, or one of them, where we tend to favor keeping things the same. It's like, it ain't broke, don't fix it. And just the idea that it's certainly more comfortable, more easy cognitively to just continue doing something you're doing, even or especially when it's not working well and that it should be changed. It's harder to change than it is to stay the same once a behavior or a habit is established, even if it's for a challenging behavior. The next one she talks about that I'm going to highlight today is called the endowment effect. And this is when we own something or we value something disproportionately, far more when we already own it and or we were involved in extensive creation of it. And when we have that going on and we can reflect back on the market and see that the market value of what we're doing is worth far less according to everybody but us, yet we still don't want to let it go because to us it feels more valuable and we don't think it should be sold or let go or negotiated for the kind of price everybody else seems to want to pay for it. So we hold on to it even when it's failing. And she goes into some very specific cases that illustrate that, both for individual and famous entrepreneurs, but also for a major public works railway, something to do with California and going through connecting the West Coast north to south, and what a debacle that wound up being. So of my favorite biases that I'm talking about today would be loss aversion, where we hate losing something 2 or more times more than we like gaining the same thing. That is, loss, evolutionarily speaking, tended to be more dangerous to our survival. So it was advantageous for us to develop a stronger aversion to losing things than to gaining things. I've certainly missed quite a few of the biases and effects she talks about in this book, and I don't really have time to list them all. So, get the book and learn about the rest. It's an excellent listen and worth your time, especially if, like me, just about every book you've read is about never give up, because never give up is actually an incomplete picture of how to succeed, especially when you're a leader. So one of the most insightful points she makes in the book right from the beginning, almost from the very first page, was that culturally we're rewarded and celebrate never giving up, always doing it, grit, but also the fact that we are punished for quitting even when quitting is exactly what we need to do. That's the flip side of the equation that is not in fashion and dives deeply into our evolutionary bias towards the aversion of loss, which in essence is like the aversion of quitting. So, well, it's true that when you're quitting and doing nothing, that is quitting out of laziness, that's easy to do. And that's what we always sort of punish, but that's an incomplete picture of what quitting can be. Quitting something that we spent years and perhaps millions of dollars creating is exceptionally hard to quit, even when we take her advice, and her advice is to do pre-mortems and something she likes to call kill criteria. So this would be sort of go, no-go criteria in many business books. So pre-mortems are when we imagine 2 futures. One future where everything works out spectacularly well, and another alternative future where everything is a train wreck, a disaster. And then what we do is we go from both of those points one at a time. We look at the disaster and we go backward through what would have preceded that disaster back to the present moment. What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the key points and the decisions that led to that disaster. We likewise do the same for the spectacular success and what key points and what decisions would have likely led to that spectacular success. So we get this more rounded version of the future. And what's really important here is that when we're in it, we are unable to quit when it matters most, because at oftentimes the right time to quit, as she demonstrates in the book, virtually always feels like we're quitting too soon, even though it's the right time. When we should be quitting, it isn't at a crisis point. That usually means we've quit too late, according to her research, which is very solid, very extensive, and academic. That's the pre-mortem and the kill criteria. And then she talks about this kill criteria, which is kind of what it sounds like it would be. And she talks about using these markers, these decision points, these pivotal points during our success journey to decide whether to quit or keep going by setting states and dates. What that really means is if by date X, Y state has not been achieved, I will quit, or I will pivot, or I will do an alternative which has already been foreseen or anticipated in the pre-mortem. And if I've achieved that state by that date, then I will continue to go, because according to my success path that I also did the pre-mortem with, I know that that's sort of on par with where I expect to be to lead to that spectacular success that I'm hoping to get. As a concrete example, I could say something like this. If by June 30th date, income from my consulting hasn't increased by $4,000 a month state, I will look for another job at another consulting firm. So that would be an example of a kill criteria. So the critical part is that you need to set these criteria at the beginning before you're in it, because research shows that we're far more likely to be unable to judge or quit once our effort, emotions, and identity become deeply invested in that venture. Congratulations, and thank you for your attention. You've made it to the bonus material. This is fairly short and sweet. To help you know whether to grit it or quit it, take a few minutes daily or weekly to prioritize your immediate tasks. The areas to pay the most attention to is the top priority immediate tasks, and the ones at the bottom of the priority list are the ones most likely to need your attention regarding those kill criteria. That's where they're likely to come out when you sort it according to the process that I've talked about in previous videos to make better use of your time, because that sorting indicates where your kill criteria may need to be applied. Are going to be at the very top of your list, immediate to-dos, or at the bottom of your list. I don't need to do that, or I can't do that because I'm not at the right state for that date. To make that more detailed and to get into the specifics of that, download my prioritization principles primer that will help you do that process systematically based on research-backed findings from Daniel Kahneman. I'll also put the link for that will be in the description, as well as a link for the companion video, which goes through that process visually. And finally, click right about there and or in the description to watch my recommended video to learn how and when to quit strategically. So this is related to this book review, but not of this book review. I did it quite a while ago. So that's it for Crush It Club 295, Quit: The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away by Annie Duke book review. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.